What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Today we're going to be talking about which ratings matter and pretty much finishing off this series. We do have the catcher position left, I believe, and then we might have a couple of things to wrap up after that in terms of bench players and whatnot. But in today's video, we're going to go over first baseman and second baseman and discuss which ratings matter for these players in MLB The Show. Specifically, we're on MLB The Show 21 on Next Gen today, but we're going to be talking about first base and second base. Alright guys, so jumping right into it, I want to first talk about second baseman, and in today's video, starting off with second base, I think that the most important thing to talk about with a second baseman is what their responsibilities are. So second basemen are very much a defensive position, but a lot of times this is a position where the player has good defensive ability, but not necessarily the best arm in the world. And the reason for that is pretty straightforward. We've already talked about third baseman and shortstop and how they have to make those long throws over from the opposite side of the infield over to first base. However, we're talking about a guy that has to make a play and make short throws to whether it be second base or first base for the most part, occasionally having to throw home and things like that. But generally speaking, they don't have to make a long throw. So you're going to see a lot of second basemen in the mold of a David Fletcher type of person that has really good fielding, really good reaction, and has pretty good contact to go along with it. Now, the other thing to mention here is that generally speaking, your second baseman isn't necessarily going to be the most athletic player in the world. You will have some players at the second base position that are relatively athletic, but as we go through here, you guys can see the highest speed I think that we've hit so far out of any player here in the high 80s is an 83. So a lot of players that have a little bit less speed, but you will see most of them have pretty good reaction and pretty good fielding ratings, as well as pretty good contact ratings. You do occasionally have a power hitter here, but the general kind of consensus of what a second baseman is like I said, some of these guys that we've gone over already that are, more of a Whit Merrifield or even potentially a David Fletcher type of player. However, one of the things that I think is interesting to note with second baseman is from an overall perspective, whenever we're taking a look at the players overall, one of the ratings that influences that overall the most is actually going to be their power. If we go ahead in and edit Whit Merrifield, and let's say we take his fielding ability up to 99, or his arm accuracy or his reaction, I did all these off screen, and they only increase his overall by a couple. So he was a 90 overall, now he's a 93 overall. Even if we took his contact and took it all the way up to 99, it's only going to increase his overall a couple points. However, what we will do, we'll drop this back down. We're at 90 now. If we go in and edit his power is actually going to take his rating through the roof. So let's say we take this up into the 90s, just max it out. That takes his overall all the way up to a 98. So I think what that offers for you is a look into how the rating is calculated for these players. That's not necessarily saying that, their arm accuracy, their reaction and things like that don't matter, because I only increased those from 72 to 99. I obviously increased the power from mid-50s up to 99, but it goes to show that second base is kind of a bit of a flexible position. We do have an idea of what the traditional second baseman is and what is expected of them, but this is a position where you can stick multiple different type of players and expect them to do well. A great example of that would be a guy like for example, Jose Altuve. Jose Altuve, right now in the show might not necessarily be the best defender or anything like that. He was in the past a pretty good defender, and but he really doesn't necessarily fit that mold. I mean, he's not like the crazy good defender, and there's quite a few of those players that are maybe a bit of a power hitter. A guy like a Dylan Moore, and there's various different guys like that at the second base position. So this is a position where you can kind of get away with being a bit flexible. You obviously want them to have some amount of defensive capability because there will be quite a few balls hit to second base, but the most defensive responsibility in the infield is going to fall on those third baseman and shortstop roles, and so you can be a bit more flexible. If there's a guy that doesn't fit into those roles, they can bounce over to second base, and they'll probably be able to play that position pretty well. Next up, let's go ahead and take a look at first baseman. And first baseman, again, is a position that is very straightforward. Whenever I scroll through these players, you guys will probably see a tendency with every single one of them. So the first thing that you might notice is one of two things. Number one, these guys are not considered to be extremely athletic. They're not going to have high speed. They're not going to have high stealing. They're really not going to be in that category. And they're probably not going to have a great arm. You know, from time to time, you'll get a guy that can play both third base and first base that probably has a pretty good arm, a guy like Nate Lowe or somebody of that nature. But most of these guys are not going to have the best arm in the world. You know, a lot of these guys are simply going to be more of a stagnant position, because a lot of times you're just covering the first base bag and you're receiving the throw that's coming to you. And so there's not a ton that is expected of you defensively. You do have to be able to field that ball whenever it's thrown your way. So that is absolutely expected of you. But you can get away with fielding ratings as low as the 60s and 50s and continually be able to make those plays without an issue. However, the thing to note with first basemen that is probably the most important rating is actually their power. This is considered, generally speaking, to be your power hitter within the team, because these guys are bigger. You know, they're bigger guys, they generate more power, they're going to be able to hit those long bombs, and that fits right in with first base, a position where you don't have to move a lot, you don't have to be super athletic, and so a lot of times those things go hand in hand. A less athletic player, a bit of a bigger build, and a lot more power. You guys can see pretty much everybody that I scroll through here is going to have at least 80 power on one side. Anthony Rizzo obviously has kind of fallen off because he's 33 years old now, but he had that power before. You know, in this franchise, you guys can see that basically everybody that's good at first base has really good power. Some of the guys will have pretty good contact to go along with that, especially if you're a really good player like a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or Freddie Freeman. But a lot of times you'll even get guys at first base that just have really good power that don't have very good contact. A guy like Matt Olson and things like that. And he's a very good defender. But primarily the most important thing here at first base is going to be your power. Say, for example, we went into Anthony Rizzo and we increased his power up to 99 on both sides. He was previously at an 84 overall. He's now going to go up to a 94 overall. So, yeah, that's a huge increase in power, but you guys can see that he's not, like, great in any category. He's not a great contact player. He's not a great athlete or anything like that. He does have, you know, reasonably good defensive attributes, but he is now one of the best first basemen in the league in terms of overall by simply maxing out on his power. So that's going to be really important for these players. The other thing to factor in is when we're talking about a good bat, you're going to want to look at their plate vision, their plate discipline, and things like that to see if that's factoring in terms of their batting ability. Because if you're trying to find a good first baseman for your team, you want somebody that not only can hit home runs, but has the ability to get the bat on the ball and get those home runs more consistently and drive in runs. Because a lot of times this guy is going to be the four-hole hitter, the cleanup hitter, because of how much power they have. And guys, that's about all I have for you guys today in terms of first base and second base. Like I said, it's one of the most straightforward positions within the game. You know, first basemen are those power sluggers. You know, you want guys there that can hit home runs and they don't have to be very athletic. And second base is kind of what I would call the odd position out in the infield, because, you know, you have those distinct roles with first base, shortstop, and third base that, you know what is specifically needed of those guys. So second base is more of a position where you kind of put the guy that doesn't fit into any of those three roles, or the odd man out. Let's say you have all three of those other roles taken, then the next best player goes to second base. Now, that's not always how it works out. You know, there are players that are groomed to be second basemen and things like that, and there are teams that value second basemen very highly, but you also have to consider that second base is probably not the most important position. In fact, I might even go as far as to say that second base is potentially the least important player within the infield. Now, that could be a bit of a toss-up, and I could see arguments one way or another, but that's kind of where I stand in terms of first base and second base. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. If you did find this video valuable and you liked this series, make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and comment down below. I'm going to be looking to do catchers next, and then, like I said, I might think about doing something for bench players or something like that. But with all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. I hope you guys have a good one.